Hi folks, I wanted to review some of the content from quizzes 5 and 6, which are the quizzes that you took last week on the gender and sexuality unit. For the most part, the answers were really great, and I think people seem to really understand the material, but as always, there are a few places where clarification is needed. So in addition to this review video, I hope you also check out the sample quiz answers that I posted on the left-hand side of the Blackboard site. All right, on quiz 5, one of the short answer questions was explain how the portrayals of men and women in advertisements work together and feed off of each other. And what this means is hypermasculinity, and that is like this exaggerated sense of masculinity, is often complemented and reinforced by women in commercials and advertisements and television shows being docile and in need of protection and somewhat infantilized and ultra feminine. And so those two portrayals really work together. You know, hypermasculinity is seen as even more important and more legitimate when there's a consistent portrayal of women as weak and in need of protection from the hypermasculine male. All right, based on our reading for this unit, hypermasculinity can be described as this is an exaggerated performance of biological maleness that focuses on danger, risk, and muscular bodies. Give one example of a feminine pose that was discussed in the codes of gender. Explain the impact of that pose. Some of you gave really specific examples like the Carmen Electra Coppertone advertisement, but really, and that was fine and I gave you credit for it, but what I was looking for here are some of those general tenets that Jolly talked about, which is those vulnerable kind of laying down poses, the childlike poses where they're like swinging and things like that, and also that they were like hypersexualized beings. And so then when I wanted you to take a look at this image, most of you said something that kind of was what I was thinking, which is these are poses that are typically associated with women in that they're laying down, they're off center, they're off balance, they're vulnerable, they're also hypersexualized in a way that doesn't make sense. That's kind of what I was expecting you to say, but I would also give you credit if you had pulled on that hyper masculine tendency. That's kind of the opposite of that. But it needed to be something from the Codes of Gender video. And as you'll see from the sample answer that I posted, most of you, and what I kind of had in mind that you would say is that these are poses typically associated with women, and it's startling and almost funny kind of to see a man in that pose. All right, in the video Codes of Gender, Jolly argues that the media promotes a sense of normalcy and gender roles, and he argues that that all of these things are there. So this is all of the above, that the media has a pattern and critics are in charge of kind of uncovering a pattern, that advertisement is not just a medium that sells products, it also sells value systems, and also gender is not necessarily something that's essential in you, but it's something that is learned. All right, we are going to go to quiz 6. Let me get there. All right, quiz 6, which is also about sexuality and gender. And I asked you to take a look at a couple clips. All right, the Real O'Neill's clip, does it show a different type of father or man that read about in the reading? What I was looking for here is some sort of discussion about that dichotomy that the television article about masculinity discussed, which is that there's like typically this dichotomy where all male characters fall in, and they are either super emotional and therefore portrayed as not a man, or they are not emotional at all and they're super manly, but they're also kind of seen as like a doofus. And a lot of you drew on that kind of doofus husband trope that we talked about back when we learned about the feminist perspective. And so some of you said like, yeah, he's like a total doofus. And so then you can tell that he's not really seen as a man because he wears skinny jeans and like, you know, he's basically made fun of. Some of you said that he felt kind of somewhere in between. And some of you didn't get that dichotomy at all, which means you need to go back and kind of reread that Congratulations television article. All right, does the Real O'Neill's clip seem to reject or confirm Dow's argument about the political individual strategy that Ellen uses on her show? A lot of you did not understand this question, which means you need to go back to that Dow article. Dow argues that the Ellen show was not particularly progressive or political because the only thing that mattered on that show was familial love and also humor. And so because they really just wanted familial love and acceptance to trump over anything else, that was really what prevented the show from being progressive. And of course, that NPR story that you listened to disagreed a little bit, and they have the benefit of even more hindsight. So I'm not sure where you come down, but it doesn't really matter to me what, if you think the Ellen show is progressive or not. What matters to me is that you understand the reasons why Dow said that it was not. And it had something to do with confession or familial love. And so that's what I was looking for here, that you would say, maybe no, or it's the same as Dow's argument because, the kid had to confess in a way that was humorous, or it was different because you don't see familial love trumping, something like that, that showed an understanding of Dow's argument. All right, heteronormativity is not the same as homophobia. If you're heteronormative, it means that you assume that everybody is straight. But if you are homophobic, it means that you don't like it when you find out that they aren't. But it's possible that you can be heteronormative, and once you find out that your assumption was wrong, that people were not always straight, that you're okay with it. But heteronormativity is things that we do when we assume that a woman has a male partner, or we assume that someone will grow up to, marry or be attracted to the opposite sex. We saw in that Ellen clip when Oprah asked, have you ever felt connected to someone? And Ellen said yes. And Oprah said, what was his name? Those types of statements are very heteronormative, and it makes it difficult for people to be able to confess, quote unquote, that they have a different sexuality. All right, girl power programming. This is all of the above. They are really progressive and empowering. And for those of us that maybe grew up watching Clarissa Explains It All or Ginger and those types of things, we know that they might be really empowering, but also they're easily co-opted. Sometimes, as we learn with Thomas Frank, corporations see something that's popular and they exploit it and they use it to sell things. All right, what is one specific from your reading masculinity stereotype? The 3 stereotypes that are typically discussed in the hypermasculinity reading is that the male has like a hyper exaggerated buff body, that they have a callous attitude towards sex and women, and that they take unnecessarily kind of dangerous and risky behaviors. And the easiest one probably to disprove with that axe is the buff body, right? They seem to really celebrate men of all kinds of shapes and sizes, but several of you said a variety of things. All right, guys, that's all I got for you. I will review the next quizzes next week. And yeah, I hope that this clears some things up for you. Email me if you have any problems.